So what should you be eating to really support your mental health? And are there certain foods that can really help support things like complex PTSD? And what do I eat in a day as a neurodivergent person? What kind of foods really actually help support my ADHD, autism, and complex PTSD? That's what we're diving into in today's show. Your brain literally washes itself because life is
So we're going to be talking about mental health, anxiety, depression, complex PTSD, autism, ADHD, all the things. But before we do that, this is the start of my morning. I am making a cacao. I'm putting some protein powder in there, some cacao. That's the brand I use, Forever Ceremonial Cacao. Putting some dandelion coffee in to support my liver. I also put in some coconut sugar to get that carbs in. So this is pre-workout. So I'm trying to get in at least 15 grams of protein, which I'm pretty sure I'm doing, and about 20 grams of carbs, which I don't think I do in this drink, but I'm pretty sure I also had a banana or half a banana with this as well. I just didn't video it because this is about 6 a.m. just to make sure I have something in my system. Fasted workouts and women, FYI, not a good thing. Just saying. But so this is me in the morning, getting some good stuff in, gonna go and do a workout, and then come back, make breakfast, do a day of work, and I'm also going to be sharing with you all of my thoughts on what to eat to support your mental health and how I've learned to thrive, even with a whole host of various labels. And let me know in the comments who here is a big coffee fan. Coffee fan? Coffee addict? Let me know. Or are you a tea person? Cacao person? Let me know. Put your emoji of your favorite beverage in the comment section. Let's see how many tea drinkers versus coffee drinkers we've got here.
So let's talk mental health and what I eat in a day, but also what are the key kind of foundations, the key things and strategies that I use on a daily basis, weekly, regular life basis, how I've structured my life to really support my mental health. I was going to say this is like coffee with Kezia, but I actually just have water. So water break with Kezia. It's not as catchy, no. So let's give you a bit of backstory in terms of my mental health. If I just give you a really potted history, I'll share with you why it's something that's really important to me, why it's something I work with my clients all the time, and actually just how powerful I found using food and lifestyle changes and factors in terms of having a massive impact on my mental well-being. Just phenomenal. So I think sometimes, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's other diagnoses going on with your mental health, it's so easy to feel hopeless and despairing and just like, is this me? Is this my life? Am I just always going to feel this way? Is this just who I am? I'm just someone that lives in this grey cloud. I'm just someone who's up and down or whatever it is. And actually, I have really experienced, and my clients have experienced, just how powerful the food you eat, the routines that you have, how much you can do to support your mental health. When I'm thinking about mental health with my clients, what I'm really actually thinking about, or one of the things I'm thinking about, because there's several factors, but one of the things I'm thinking about is brain health. How well nourished is your brain? How much ingredients does your brain have to make all of those neurons and all of those things? Are you feeding yourself healthy brain fats? Is your methylation going on to help with new neuron production? Like, looking at brain health, how healthy is your brain? How is it being fueled? Your brain actually uses up an awful lot of energy, and how well is that being fueled? So we're looking at brain health. We're also looking at your history, things like adverse childhood events and trauma are really clear in the research are going to predispose you or increase your risks to all sorts of health issues, mental health obviously being one, but even things like autoimmunity and various other things. So it's really helpful to look, and again, just to know what your unique root causes are. For me personally, I was always an anxious child, but I did have multiple years of quite severe abuse as well, which then has led to this complex PTSD diagnosis that I live with and have learned to thrive with, which is important. But it's also helpful to know, and helpful for me to know, and to have compassion on my brain, just knowing my brain grew up for a good number of years in a really traumatic environment, and that has impact and will impact some of the development of my brain. So what I need to do now as an adult is understand that none of what happened to me was my fault. I wasn't responsible for it. It should never have happened. It was an awful thing. But as an adult, I am responsible for the choices I make now, for what I do with that, with how I choose to live, what I do with that experience. Do I choose to stay a victim? Do I choose to stay small and just live with the anxiety and all the kind of symptoms that come with that kind of experience? Or do I decide to take responsibility and choose, actually, no, this isn't going to be a defining part of my life. It's maybe a way that my brain has developed, and that's okay. But this isn't a defining moment of me. I'm going to create a beautiful life. And also in recent years, as I've done various different therapies and trauma therapies and all these kinds of things to help with that, I've also strongly suspect, although I haven't been diagnosed, that I have ADHD and also have lived with autism. So that dual diagnosis, I would like to get it diagnosed at some point soon, but I probably need to go private, and that can just be an investment. So I'm just saving up for that. But from the self-screening that I've done, that also makes a lot of sense. And also chicken and egg then, that's why I want to go down an official route and chat to some specialized psychiatrist who actually, something just pinged, from somebody who actually knows the difference, complex PTSD, the interplay between those things, because I just think that would be really fascinating. So saying all that, that's a little bit about me. So what do I do to really keep myself well and cultivating peace and healthy and, dare I say it, joyful at times? Not constantly, because life is up and down. But what are the things that I do to keep my brain healthy? And that's what we're going to be sharing with you today. And so one of the first things, one of the big tips that is helpful, especially if you're like me and you have lived with a strong feeling of anxiety, hypervigilance, being on edge, if you've had trauma, adverse childhood events, and that hypervigilance, that freeze, fawn, fight aspects you can get stuck in that. One of the really practical things that you can focus on and be mindful of and experiment with your own body, because your own genetics and everything all interplay here, is caffeine. So you'll notice this morning, I don't wake up and reach for coffee. I don't wake up and reach for this really highly caffeinated beverage. I wake up, I support my detoxification symptom, because at night when we're sleeping, there's a whole lot of detoxing going on. And in the morning, we all wake up dehydrated. We all smell a little bit. We brush our teeth, we have a shower, we go to the toilet because we're releasing things that we've been doing in the night. You've been sleeping and chilling out, but your body has been highly productive while you sleep. That's how I frame it to all my clients. Sleep, if you optimize your sleep, it is this incredible, highly productive time. Like your brain literally washes itself while you sleep. I just think it's so cool. And we don't even fully understand the power of sleep. We don't really totally understand what happens when we go to sleep, other than we know it's like super important. So anyway, you wake up in the morning, I have water, or herbal tea, something flushing, get my digestive system and going. And then I might be having a herbal tea. I think this morning I had a cacao because I was going to the gym, but I'm not reaching for caffeine straight away. Caffeine, because of how it affects your hormones and adrenaline and all these kinds of things, it can just get you really wired. And if you live in a state of anxiety and panic and struggle with panic attacks and these kind of things, you really want to be mindful of your relationship with caffeine and figure out what works for you. What I often get clients to do is massively reduce their caffeine, maybe even gently remove it over time. Don't necessarily do this at once because you'll get a headache and might feel awful. And just figure out what feels good for you. So for me, probably having one caffeinated beverage a day works. From my genetic profile, I am actually quite a fast metabolizer of caffeine. So it doesn't stay in my system, but not everybody is. So figuring out caffeine can be really, really helpful. Now, the opposite of true, say you're somebody doesn't really struggle with anxiety at all, but you struggle with motivation and you just have you're just low, your mood is low in the morning, you can't get going, then sometimes caffeine can help because you might not have a really great cortisol awakening response in the morning, your natural alarm clock. I have a great natural alarm clock because I've worked on it. I have that cortisol, I will feel awake. I don't need caffeine to wake me up. And if you do need caffeine to wake you up, if you can't function without caffeine, then that's probably a sign that there is some irregularities with your circadian rhythm. I spend a lot of time with clients making sure this cortisol awakening response, this punch in the morning is happening, because you shouldn't need caffeine to wake up. But if you're really low in mood, or because I always think about anxiety is very fast, it's quite high energy, but it's not like a pure energy. It's not a lovely energy. It's a frantic energy. And I think of depression as like Eeyore from like Winnie the Pooh. It's just hard to do anything. I have had periods in my life when I've been depressed and it's really difficult, but I lean more towards anxiety. So, which makes sense with that ADHD. For me, my dopamine runs high. So it's that high dopamine, high anxiety, high adrenaline going on. But I've worked with a lot of people where that's the opposite. It's the slowness. And so caffeine can be helpful there, but generally speaking, that's when I would use things like cacao, matcha, these kinds of sources of caffeine that also say matcha would come with L-theanine, which is really calming for the brain. So for supporting mental health, for what I do for helping with my complex PTSD and the neurodivergency and all these things, is making sure I check in with caffeine and I have a really healthy relationship with it. Anyway, I need to get back to work, so we'll check in a minute.
So this is me getting ready for breakfast, or you could argue second breakfast, a little bit of a pre-breakfast before the gym, but now it's time for some real food. I'm hungry. I've got some granola, it needs to be quick. I'm getting the kids. If you watched my other videos, this is my current favorite breakfast. I tend to go through little fixations on things I really like, and I'll eat it constantly for a few months, and then I'll move on. Like last year, end of 2024, there was a lot of overnight oats, and now I'm totally over that. And now I'm into granola, and at some point I'll move into like baked oats or scrambled eggs or whatever, my next phase. So I always have a little bit of granola, and then I add some protein powder. I'm trying a new protein powder out at the moment, a beef protein powder, which is actually I'm quite liking, because I don't know, I feel like a lot of protein powders are just really processed, have a lot of ingredients, and yeah, so I'm giving that a try. I always add some yogurt to it. I think this morning we'd ran out of yogurt, so I had some goat yogurt and not as much as I normally do. I also added some linseeds to help my hormones. And there we have it. Got a whole lot of fiber, got some carbs. Would like more yogurt on this, but that we just had what we had. And normally I would pile on a lot more protein, but there we go. That is my breakfast. And you'll see later on that I actually do get hungry. And need to eat something. Then it's time for some supplements. So here's a little bit of a quick rundown. Again, these are just what I take. They're not necessarily what everybody should take. Fish oil. Actually, scrap that. Fish oil is generally really well researched and great for the majority of people, especially when there's mental health issues. So in order for your brain to work really well, you need B vitamins, and you need a specific type of fat called DHA, which comes in fish oils. So I've been really cognizant the last probably couple of years about making sure I take enough fish oil. I work part-time for a research charity that has done lots of research into lots of things, but one of them is omega-3s and the brain. And every week I'm just learning more and more information about how important omegas are for the brain. I've also got really bad hay fever at the moment, so I thought it's always helpful to see people taking medication. And then this morning, honestly, it was a rare morning. I had time. I sat down for probably 5 minutes. I ate my breakfast. The kids were playing mainly happily on the trampoline. And I could just look at me. I'm sitting on a comfy seat, eating my breakfast. I have to say, this happens 10% of the time. But I just owned it. I was like, this is great. I've already been to the gym. Kids are all fed. They're all changed. They're all creamed. They're all ready to go. I'm just going to sit and eat my breakfast. It was a total delight. And then the joy continued. They kept playing on the trampoline without killing, hitting, or hurting each other. And while it might not have been super obvious in the previous clip, I haven't got makeup on yet. So this is me putting on my makeup, shouting occasional parenting things out the window. Complete side note, what you put on your skin matters. And I'm sure at some point I will go through all the different things that I use. But I really try over the last probably 7 or 8 years to build up a really non-toxic makeup bag. It has taken time, I have to say. It has not been the easiest thing to do because a lot of natural makeup sucks, to be honest. But more things are becoming available. So I don't wear loads of makeup, but I love the ritual of essentially painting my face and making myself look a little bit brighter. It's nice for my brain. Look at my face though. This is me being like, are you guys causing trouble outside? But a rare, quiet morning. Doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it's a total delight. And then honestly, God and the angels must have been on my side today, because I then went and had a quick wander in the garden to see, first of all, why one of my kids was carrying a massive stick around, because I suspected they were going to start whacking each other, just to have a little check on some of, general development. As you can see, it's all quite brown. This is me explaining to the kids that this is where they dug up everything, and Mummy was quite sad. If you missed that, go back to the last episode and us trying to figure out what actually is growing. And then it's a school run. I don't do the school run every single day. We take turns, we're a tag team. But I have actually found going for a little walk, the routine that school run enforces actually has been really fun to just force me to get outside, go for a little walk, come rain or shine. It's actually really nice. It's been really good for my brain.
The other thing that I do that has made the world of difference, and I think is potentially one of the most underrated mental health medicines, is exercise and movement. It's really clear in the research that it is beneficial, but I think it's something that we don't fully realize. And for me, movement, so this morning I went to the gym, but some mornings that might mean yoga, other mornings that might mean going for a run or for a walk. It's so important. I really got into fitness, unicorn, car seat at the back. I really got into fitness in my 20s, actually, when I was in a period of real depression. And being able to go for I think I had a GP at the time. I went there, I did the whole questionnaire. They were like, you're depressed, do you want some drugs? And I remember thinking at the time, I don't think I do want drugs. I think it just didn't feel right. I felt like there was other stuff I could do, like there was a reason I was depressed. And so I think this doctor recommended exercise. And I was never sporty at school. I actually had very traumatic times at PE, being overweight, all the things. But anyway, I started running. And that was probably in my late teens, like 1920s. And I started going to yoga. That was when I started yoga. And why actually now I'm in the process of becoming a qualified yoga teacher. Because it's been a practice I've been doing for 20 years now, and it's just been so helpful. Anyway, but I started running, and when I ran, I felt so much better. It was like one of the most helpful medications for my depression ever. And the great thing is, because for you medication might be a path, and that's totally fine. And exercise adds on to that. All the things I'm sharing in this video are all stuff that you can do with or without medication to support your mental health. But moving your body is so essential, I think, for supporting your mental well-being, and it's one of the most underrated medicines. So anyway, let's go.
Then this morning I decided to go and work in a coffee shop, and I was still really hungry. I don't think I'd eaten enough protein, and I must have done a hard workout at the gym. So I got these egg things and a matcha latte. Again, what we talked about in terms of caffeine. And then lunch was some leftovers. It was some chicken, sweet corn. I'm not even sure what it is, to be honest. It was just some sort of chicken casserole that I had, and it was actually really nice. Then I got hungry in the afternoon and I had a quick milkshake. It doesn't look very appealing here because I didn't mix it very well, but some cacao, some goat's milk, some protein powder, some ice, probably a bit of stevia in there as well. That's often the sweetener that I use.
So I'm going to chat to you about two other things that are really important when it comes to supporting your mental health, whilst also making dinner. The exciting thing about dinner tonight is I'm not feeding my kids, so I can make something different and a little bit ad hoc and maybe a bit spicy. My kids can handle a little bit of spice, but not loads. At this phase of life, they're in their prime fussy eating stage. Although thankfully, I'm not that fussy, which is helpful. Anyway, so when it comes to supporting your mental health, there's a couple of things. Now, one of the things you might say, Kezia, you say this all the time, which I do, but just bear with me and I'll be really quick. But protein. Yeah. If you watch my other videos, you'll be like, oh my goodness, Kezia, stop talking about protein, which is fine. And I also love fat and I also love carbohydrate. But just a quick fact is, if we think about serotonin, right? What's that made out of? What do you need to make serotonin in your body? You need something called tryptophan. What is tryptophan? It's an amino acid. Where do you get tryptophan from? You get it from foods, chicken, turkey, protein. So a lot of the neurotransmitters, that's getting loud, that we want more of, that we think about, that support our brain health and brain balance, actually require amino acids. They require protein intake into the body to help make them. So another reason to eat and make sure you're getting enough good quality protein. Also, now this isn't just about protein because healthy fats and fiber also play a role in this, but supporting your insulin management, again, I've talked about this a lot, really helps your brain. If your brain feels like its energy supply is uneven or at threat, it really affects your mood. For example, imagine you are in a classroom of primary school kids and they haven't had breakfast and it's 10:30 in the morning, it's getting to break time. What is the behavior like? Ask any primary teacher and they will tell you the kids' behavior. They will also tell you the kids' behavior if you give the entire class tons of sugar and sweets, because food you eat or don't eat affects your brain and behavior. So when it comes to supporting your brain and mental health, making sure that you'll keep your insulin levels balanced and not up and down like you want them to be smooth by eating healthy fats, healthy fibers, whole food carbohydrates, and good quality protein makes the world of difference. It's really, really important. So protein, I'm not going to talk about that too much because I feel like I could talk about it and have harped on about it many, many times. But it is really worth mentioning again, A, because of how it affects your insulin management, B, how it contributes to the neurotransmitter production in your body. Even things like sleep, right? Side note, melatonin is made from serotonin. So if you're not getting enough tryptophan to make serotonin, then you're not going to be able to make sufficient melatonin. And that's going to massively affect your sleep. Like, some people don't know this stuff. When I first learned it, this is years ago, I was like, whoa, mind blown. Because it's like, wow, who knew that some of the simple food choices that you make in a day actually have a massive, massive impact on your sleep, on how happy you feel, on how joyful you feel, all of these things. It makes a huge, huge difference. So that's the first thing. Right, I'm going to continue chopping and then chopping chorizo. So I feel like this needs a little bit more focus. The next thing is sugar. It's the one that nobody wants to talk about, but is so important. For me personally, if I eat too much sugar, I massively notice it in terms of my mental health. My anxiety, my mood, my levels of contentment, my joy, not to mention like my immune system. If I eat loads of sugar, I get sick regularly. All sorts with my kids, especially if they eat loads of sugar. Oh my goodness, that I literally don't give my kids loads of sugar selfishly, so I don't have to deal with those kind of behaviors. And I also strongly suspect if I'm neurodiverse, then my kids will be as well. And so we just don't need that going on. So just getting everything in the pan. Sugar, because of how it affects the brain. Now, your brain loves sugar. Your brain runs off glucose and ketones. But if you're, like we talked about before, insulin management or blood glucose is up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, that's really inflammatory and can really affect your overall brain health. So if you're constantly drinking sugary drinks, having lots of sugar, even healthy sugars, whole food sugars, without the buffer of fiber, of protein, you can really contribute to your overall mood. I find if there is depression, anxiety, any mental health issue, you really want to be mindful of your sugar intake and really work hard on reducing sugar. A lot of people with mental health problems kind of get addicted to sugar to get that little bit of like, that little dopamine, woo, like kick, but then they pay the price. What comes up must come down. And when you have mental health problems, the down is harsh. It's low, more so than maybe your friends. I often found that a lot of the people I work with, when there's a lot of anxiety, depression, OCD, neurodivergency, all of those kind of things, sugar makes a huge difference. So I'll probably go into it more in detail in another video, but really making sure that you are the one who is in charge of your sugar intake, meaning you're not just mindlessly eating it and feeling like it's out of control or that you're addicted to it, makes a huge, huge difference and is one of the kind of simplest things, best, most optimal things you can do to actually support your mental health. So whether it's just starting small and kind of lowering the sugar in your coffee, for example, getting rid of the biscuits, the chocolate bars, wherever it is, really being mindful of how many sweet tasting foods am I having in a day? Is that all the time? And really looking at how much sugar, glucose, fructose, all of these different sugars, how often are they appearing in your diet? Because honestly, if you can slowly reduce those and remove them from your diet, I know you're going to feel better in terms of your mood, your sleep, your anxiety, your levels of inflammation. I know it's something that we kind of know a bit more about now when it comes to sugar, but it really does make a difference. And I don't think a lot of people think about it when it comes to mental health. And especially for me, with my anxiety, complex PTSD, all these kind of things, eating a lot of sugar does not serve me. I don't feel good, so it actually isn't fun anymore. I used to be such a sugar fiend, eat loads of sugar, binge eat quite a lot, and it would leave me feeling much worse. Whereas now I enjoy food. Like you'll see me eating croissants and sugary cake and things on here, but actually for me, it feels far more empowering to have that actually in balance. So we've talked about caffeine, we've talked about movement and exercise, a little bit on protein, and then sugar. Those I think are really foundational aspects. There's lots more nuanced biohacky things that I do also to support my brain, which I'm sure I'll talk about in future. But those are the key foundations, the things that I think have really moved the needle when it comes to my mental health, but also the things that I've seen in the last 10 years of working with clients on a one-to-one basis in my online clinic. Those are the things that move the needle. You don't have to do all of them at once, but begin with one, whether it's exercise or caffeine, whichever one feels the easiest, start there and you will see your mood improve, because there is so much you can do to feel better. There's so much you can do to improve your mental health, your focus, your productivity, your motivation, because through the foods that you eat, through the choices that you make in the day, so you're not doomed to live this completely depressed and anxious life. There is improvement. You can make progress. You can support and nourish your brain and then watch how that impacts how you feel. The emotions that you have are not separate from your brain chemistry. They are one. And the more you support your biochemistry, your brain chemistry, the more you're going to see change in your emotions and your mood. And that's the thing that a lot of us never got taught and don't realize. But now you know. So now you have choice, you have power, you can do it. And I'm going to eat some of these incredible dried apricots. So good.
Dinner was a chorizo and bean stew, and then I cooked some added prawns on the side because #protein, and it was actually super yummy.
I've also just realised the irony of finishing that video eating a dried apricot, which is really sugary. So I've also been eating a carrot as well, just to show you the full spectrum. One dried apricot, all the fibre of a carrot. A good example of how to balance your insulin, and I'm about to have dinner.
So there you go. That's what I do to look after my brain with all the trauma it's been through, with the mental health issues, with it being a neurodivergent place to be. Those are some of the foundational things, just the way I live my life, that really help me to thrive and be really empowered by those labels and not a victim to them.